when the tragedy comes, because we can't protect ourselves from never having a tragedy happen.
Right.
But she said, when a tragedy did come, I realized that all my mental anguish didn't actually prepare me to handle it.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, stressed out Christians who don't want to just get through the week. I'm Liz Frericks, and this is my husband Evan.
Hi there.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us today on this wonderful Monday.
Yeah, and welcome back to us. We took a week off, and I don't know, I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would.
Well, we had plans for stuff we were going to do, but our computer problems kind of just swallowed up all of our time. So it was actually a really good thing that we had time off to be able to try to sort those things out.
Yeah, trying to be flexible and use the CSCs anyway, so it's good practice.
Definitely. As you guys know, we work our way through the CSCs. They are adaptations of Peter Ralston's Tai Chi principles, being calm, surrendered, centered, connected, and complete. And since there are 5 of them, we do one every weekday. You know, we've designed our show to kind of be a reminder, sort of to help us process the things that we're learning and have learned, but also because we know that just being exposed to these concepts over and over and over and over again is so life-changing.
This week's going to be inspired by the Brené Brown book, Daring Greatly, and a certain section in there called Vulnerability Armor.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it because, like I said, this is stuff that we're learning and processing, and it's been really good. So since it's Monday, we're going to talk about being calm. And the piece of armor that kind of stuck out to me when we were reading it, as far as calm goes, is Foreboding Joy.
Well, and just in general, so these armors, they're protecting us from kind of our
vulnerability.
Which brings up, maybe fear or in different levels of discomfort at least.
Right, feeling inadequate.
Right. So there's different things in armor we're going to put in place to defend against all that stuff.
Right. I think kind of when anyone thinks of the word vulnerable, there's not a lot of good connotations with it.
I think it's synonymous with weakness in a lot of people's mind.
Yeah.
And all throughout the book, all of Brené Brown's work, really, she's turning that on its head, talking about it as a strength, especially when it comes to strengthening relationships and growing as a person.
Right. We can't do either of those things unless we're actually vulnerable.
So today, Foreboding Joy. When I thought about this when we were reading it, in 12-step, we used to talk about dealing with the wreckage of our past. And then there was also a secondary term, the wreckage of the future, which is kind of this doomsday scenario, constant vigilance, kind of like, bracing yourself for this imaginary history or future that's not coming.
Well, and that's Foreboding Joy. She defines it as that moment when you feel joy and instead of embracing it, you jump into tragedy scenarios. One of the first one I think that she mentioned, I was like, oh yeah. Like when you watch your kids sleep and you're just like, oh, they're so awesome. And you love them so much. And then you immediately jump into, what would I ever do if I lost them? What am I going to do if somebody kidnaps them? What am I going to do if,
what if something bad happens?
Right. They fall out of the tree and end up breaking their necks.
Yeah, I kind of thought about this phrase. It's like when contentment is lurking at the door. We throw up this shield and we're like, no. I'm going to get anxious about something. Contentment, you just go away now.
Right.
I'm going to wreck this moment by worrying. Right.
It's really the opposite of calm. Like, in order to handle the vulnerability, we throw ourselves into a state of anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's so subconscious. I think a lot of the time, I know with my PTSD, there have been times where, like, I don't even register why something is happening. I just know I start panicking.
Yeah.
And it's because, I've talked before, like when I first started doing Tai Chi, I was having relaxation-induced panic attacks because my brain was like, okay, if you relax, that means there's no more constant vigilance and that's super dangerous, so I'm going to throw you into a panic attack.
You just did. Yeah, I mean, for years you've been doing the work of maintaining all these shields, and then you go to something like Tai Chi and you're trying to take them down, and it's like, we can't have that.
Right, yeah.
I think it is important to note that it's often, we don't realize we're doing it.
Right.
Like I've had these horrible, they feel almost like visions where it's just like, like as a kid, I would do it where I was just like, what if my parents die? What's the plan? And then I, have this whole thing. Or, with kids too, having a family now of our own, it's like, we got to have this plan sorted out. And it becomes this daydream fantasy thing. And it's hard, it feels impossible to stop thinking about. It's just tragedy after tragedy. What would I do if this happened? What would I do if there's a fire? What would I do if there's an earthquake? What about a flood?
Yeah, well, and there's two different components that she talks about. The first one is that rehearsing tragedy, and the second one is perpetual disappointment, which, I can understand the rehearsing tragedy one. I definitely have a philosophy of like, okay, everything's going well. What's next? Waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I think you tend more towards the rehearsing tragedy, and I tend more towards the perpetual disappointment.
Right. Yeah, like you won't let yourself kind of just revel in the moment for a minute.
Right. I never get excited about anything. I was thinking about this earlier because when I've reading this book has really been a challenging thing for me. I've been working on it for probably, 6 weeks or something. But when I first read this section, I was like, you know what? That's totally me. I let myself get disappointed. Like, I just expect things not to go well. And then when they don't go well, I'm just like, how do we handle this? And it's super stressful. But I rarely get excited about anything. I mean, it's fun when it happens. And I'm like, oh, that was nice that happened.
After the fact.
But there's no anticipation.
Yeah.
There's like tons of anticipation of negative things. Like when the car problems, we had our car in the shop last week. And we were waiting for our mechanic to find out what exactly was wrong with it. And I was fully braced for it to be the transmission that was toast. And then when you called me and you were like, oh, it's this horrible $200 or $300 thing. And I was like, yes, it's not the transmission.
Right.
So,
and now that we have the car out and it's like, okay, everything's fine now. We can be content with our car. It's still hard to be like,
oh no,
what else is going to break?
Yeah. I told somebody yesterday, I was like, well, the car's back, but
you're not holding your breath.
I'm not holding my breath. Yeah. I'm like, okay, this will be a nice week while we have the car.
It's stealing calm, definitely.
Right.
We're self-sabotaging our peace and we're stifling growth we just automatically get caught up in stuff like that. I think a lot of people do.
Right.
We know we do.
Well, we don't want to be blindsided by hurt, is what Brené Brown talks about. Vulnerability is that we might get hurt. There's that possibility there. And there's pretty much a guarantee that at some point you're going to get hurt, whether it's this moment or some other moment. Mm-hmm. So we try to short circuit vulnerability.
Yeah. But, she had a really good point in the book, too. She said something about rehearsing tragedy when the tragedy comes, because we can't protect ourselves from never having a tragedy happen.
Right.
But she said, when a tragedy did come, I realized that all my mental anguish didn't actually prepare me to handle it.
Right, yeah. She had this great interview with an older gentleman who was talking about how he rehearsed tragedy and then his wife died.
And nothing prepared him for that.
Right.
So to someone who does that, that may be like, well, I just didn't plan hard enough. But I think there should be comfort there in like, we can let go and let God handle it because we can't plan all those contingencies out. We just aren't capable of that. And so what choice do we have,
Yeah.
To dive into our faith a little bit more because it's not helping.
Right.
It's so hard to let go, though.
Well, and I think, the same thing with the disappointment thing, recognizing that it actually is a negative spiral, downward spiral, because we can choose which way we're going to go. And if we choose foreboding joy, then we're choosing to not be vulnerable, to not be able to experience joy, because joy, needs vulnerability in order to grow.
Yeah.
And happiness and all those kinds of things, contentment. And so then we have an even more negative view of the world. Just like we've talked about with your reticular activating system. If I were to say, look for all the red things in your room, and then had you close your eyes and list off everything that was yellow, you wouldn't have noticed the yellow things because you're focused on the red. And so the more we indulge in foreboding joy, the more we set our brains to focus on the negative, and the more discontented and dissatisfied we are with our lives. So obviously we don't want to stay in the downward spiral. We want to move into an upward spiral, which Brené Brown talks about how the solution is to practice gratitude, because that then again, going back to the reticular activating system, that creates a pattern in our brains where we're looking for the positive and we're more happy and more...
And it's a lot of work, though, yeah. But yeah, we want our eyes to be open to what God is doing and his provision and his care, and that is a lot. Our care doesn't go that far. God's care is infinite.
And I like that she says that it's a practice, because gratitude really is, it's not something that we're automatically good at. I mean, some people are lucky enough to have, had parents who instilled that practice in them, but some of us, when we're adults, we just gotta do the work of practicing now. And
I think it takes practice for anybody, though, too. It's way easier to gripe and complain and see the negative than to be grateful.
But the more we do it, the better we'll be at it. It really makes a difference. Probably about a year ago, I started doing, in my planner, I actually have a section for gratitude and daily wins. And I start my morning off with gratitude and try to end my day with, here's the good things that happened, just to create that sensitization to the positive instead of a sensitization to the negative.
Yeah, something else that I've just kind of started thinking about and doing is in Psalm 63, verse 6. So this is a Psalm of David. He was in the Judean wilderness, but the little verse that I was kind of meditating on, it says, "When I think of you in my bed, I will meditate on you in the night watches. For you have been my strength, and in the shadow of your wings I will shout for joy." So just finding a little quiet moment, like you were saying, in this case it was, in the morning, just before I'm actually out of bed, being like, trying to meditate on, God's goodness and provision for a little while. It made a big difference, but it's a practice. We need to be doing that kind of stuff throughout our day. And we're pushing against a pretty powerful force, though, that foreboding joy.
Right. Well, and we have a culture that's designed for negativity. I mean, that's just the reality. There's negative. You watch the news, it's constantly violent. We were just talking about violent podcasts yesterday. There's just, it's everywhere. We have to push counterculturally and decide that we're going to be grateful. Because vulnerability can either push us away, we can choose to not lean into vulnerability and to put up our armor and to become even more closed in and less able to grow and all that kind of stuff. Or we can use vulnerability as a stepping stone to become better people.
Yep.
All right. We love you guys and we're praying for you. Thanks to everybody that's been listening to the show and sharing the show. We really appreciate it. If you have found this podcast helpful, please do continue to share it. And if you haven't joined our email list, go ahead and do that. We haven't put it out the last couple of weeks because of our computer problems, but hopefully we've got that rectified to the point where we can do it again.
Yep. You can do that over at our webpage, epiceverydaynow.com. And so tomorrow we'll continue on through this idea about vulnerability armor. We're going to talk about when we self-numb or self-medicate, or if we're just trying to take the edge off and surrender for tomorrow.
All right. Have an awesome Monday.
See ya.